Hello and welcome to Better Beyonds, and I'm proud to say I'm here with my father, Al Fialka, today. Al, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Jerry. Glad
All
to
right.
be here. Flew all the way from Flint, Michigan to come to your program.
All right.
You guys are the best here.
Oh, thanks a lot. Well, we try to be with our Better Beyonds. We try to go better than the beyond. So, Al, I was wondering, one of the things that you taught me that's important is if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say nothing at all. And I think that's a really good rule to live by. But like the whole human condition, there's a bit of a paradox because you find that in struggling with conviction and compromise, that sometimes you want to be convicted to the idea that unless I have something nice to say, don't say it. And then you have to struggle with the fact that sometimes there's that fine line where you're committed to something passionately, so it's a natural sort of human emotion to get fired up. How do you find that balance?
Well, what I do when I talk to people, because you never know what their thoughts are on any subject, and I like to play patience advocate. What you do is you bring up a subject, or they bring up a subject, and you say, well, what do you think about this? Whether it's politics or sports or medical situations or whatever. I ask them, what do you think about this situation, or what do you think about this person? And after they tell me their feelings, I usually don't go in the opposite direction to cause them real harm and anger and so forth. I just try to ask them more and more questions about what they think and why they think it, so that a lot of times I learn from those experiences, because things that I thought about something in one way, I hear something the other way that sounds very reasonable. So I like to play patience advocate and, talk to people, and everybody knows something.
That's for sure.
Even my wife knows so much.
Well, that's great, because a friend of mine says his mom taught him that 90% of what you say is how you say it.
I agree. I have read articles in the papers that justify this, where somebody has said something and somebody else uses the same words and language, and two different reactions from it. So I think the way you talk means a lot.
Right. And I think you raised a lot of good points in your first statement, because if you ask people to elaborate on what they're saying, in fact, it's funny, someone told me the best way to pick up a woman is just say, when they say something, say, tell me more about that.
Sure.
And she'll love that. But it's that probing sort of attitude, and they're in the process of explaining to you. But back to the emotion thing, it seems that we've been bestowed with an elaborate array of emotions. And one of my questions in my past interviews was anger a productive emotion? And the great Parliament Funkadelic leader, George Clinton, said, well, all emotions are productive and non-productive. And he didn't want to say, sort of like where you keep a middle ground and not take a point of view, he didn't want to say anger is not a productive emotion, because it's something that happens natural to humans. So I think, the challenge is how you deal with the anger. But again, back to the one of the main lessons you taught me. If you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. I mean, if you're passionate about something and you're so driven, there's that fine line. How do you not make your point without getting fired up? In that regard, some people will say that fired up emotion is not saying something nice.
When you are angry or you're talking to people and you talk to them in a loud, angry manner, they miss half of your meaning.
Right.
Because their minds are going, I don't like the way
Right.
he's talking, and when that happens, they're really not listening to what you're saying. So I think anger is a real negative behavior.
Right.
It doesn't help either person, the one that's talking or the one that's listening.
Right. That's interesting. Another friend, a psychologist, said, if you're angry and you know it, stamp your feet and get on with it.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to let the emotion go through you, but there's some sort of release that should or naturally happen.
Yeah.
And otherwise you suppress it and you're going to have more trouble.
In my house, one of my little signs that I have in our room that I pass by every day is a little sign that says, live and let live.
That's another one you taught me, yeah.
I don't know whether you want to know the basis for my behavior and thoughts, but I fought in World War II, landed on Normandy Beach, got all shot up, faced death every day, slept in 2 feet of snow in the Battle of the Bulge, and I enjoy every day of my life. So the so-called negative behavior, experience of fighting in a war, I think I appreciate life more than most all people, because I face death every day, and I'm glad to get up and enjoy whatever is coming.
Right. So you were pushed to that extreme situation, so it sort of enabled you to spend the rest of your life in the pursuit of, like, pursuit of the joy in life.
Yeah. So watch when people, when you talk to people and they just talk about all the negative things that have happened in their life, they're just spoiling their own life. They accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative.
There you go. It's a good song.
I like that one.
And in regards to the war, that's another interesting subject I want to bring up, because I try to study what's called conflict resolution. And I've found, it's a difficult subject. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on conflict resolution in general, like between, you and a friend or two nations.
Well, I think what you have to do when a subject comes up and you both disagree, I think you have to listen to each side to find out their total thoughts on a subject. And if you don't understand some of their feelings, I think it's okay to ask them questions to get the feelings out that you didn't hear that they may have had and didn't say. So it's a give and take, Make sure you find out everything about each other's feelings. And the other thing is, sometimes you can't come to an immediate conclusion during a discussion of differences. Sometimes, like, you can just walk out of the room or walk out of the house and say, I'm going to just take a walk for a half hour. And while you're gone for a half hour, you may come up with thoughts that make sense to what the discussion was about that you didn't think about while the discussion was going on. So it's always a good thing to let time go on. Don't try to settle everything right away.
Right.
Life is too short to get.
Well, that's a good one for nations, I think, in general, where they tend to, in this day and age, revert immediately to military as a resolving factor in conflict, when there seems like there's so many other strategies as human beings that we could come up with. And again, going back to George Clinton, he said, think, it ain't illegal yet. It's like the power of the mind is so amazing that why is it always a immediate fall to the military to resolve conflict when, like I say, sit down and eat a pizza together or something?
Yeah. You know what I would suggest? You take two nations that are distant from each other, and they like to shoot each other and kill each other and so forth. Take about 6 or 8 or 10 people from each of those nations that are strong-minded. Put them on an island. Put them on an island and live together on that island for 6, 8, 10, 12 months. And pretty soon, after that time, I think they'll both find out that what they want, what they desired, and what they need is the same, even though you're this nationality or this nationality. I think they would find out, gee, we can get along because we both like this, we both like this, and whatnot. I think that would be so influential on whole nations because,
right.
We've been fighting wars since the beginning of time. Why can't we get along?
Right.
If we were all blind, would we still have our prejudices?
It's hard.
Yeah. You don't really know people like you should.
Yeah.
We don't give them a chance.
That's a good lead into a subject I wanted to talk to you about, Al, is community and family. Now, you raised me with a good sense of family. With, there's 4 kids in our family, mom and dad, and we always have that dedication to the idea that family tradition is important and the ritual of family is important. And I duly appreciate you raising me that way. And I was wondering how you developed that sense,
Well, I think I was influenced by the way I was raised up. We had 11 kids in our family, and when we were, growing up, that was during the Depression, 1920s, 1930s. We didn't have any money, but the whole neighborhood was the same way. So we learned to get along not only as a family of 11 kids, but as a family of the whole neighborhood, And I think that was a big influence in the way we raised you and our kids. You didn't get too strict, but you had rules and regulations, and you had times in life when you were, told how good you did about something, praised you when you deserved it. Because a lot of times that doesn't happen nowadays. The family life is too fast now. The children don't get time to sit down with their parents and be praised for the good things they do and suggest to them things that would improve their life. So I think my family, the influence we had growing up, the whole neighborhood was family, and we learned from each other. I can remember people that I grew up with, and that's, I'm 81 years old, and I can go back 75 years and remember things that our neighbors did for me that,
stuck with you.
Stuck.
Yeah.
And it taught you.
Yeah.
So we may not have passed all of that on to you, Gerry, but,
I have a pretty good memory, I think, if I remember right. But what about the idea, like where were you in the family?
I was the 8th of 11.
8th oldest? Or 8th young?
No, the 8th one born.
Oh, okay.
So there's 4 of us left.
Right. And so where, was it in the upbringing that you acquired this sort of skill at being inquisitive, questioning? Do you think that was part of family upbringing or schooling, college? Where do you think your sort of attraction to being a questioner?
Well, I think each of those contributed, but I would guess that when I became a teenager, and in high school, and interacting with other people, because when we were, younger, we didn't interact too much because the neighborhood was small and we didn't have cars or anything like that, or airplanes or anything. But I think as I was growing older, in high school and in college, and you meet more and more diversified people, So you learn the differences that all the people had, and you learn how to accept them, or else your life was worse than their life.
Right.
So I think that contributed, plus the fact that fighting in the war gave you an appreciation more of life, than not fighting in a war. And I don't think everybody reacted to the same way I did, but I just appreciated. I can remember fighting one time, and it was raining and dirty and all that, and when the bombs started coming down, well, that one time I just jumped in a pile of mud and water because I didn't want to get hit. And my captain, he says, "Fialka, what's a grown man like you doing playing in the mud?" So, he brought out the lightness of life that
Right.
made you appreciate, look, you're glad you can jump in a pile of mud. So
Right.
things like that, I think, influenced the way I brought
Right.
up. The other thing, my wife has influenced me for 55 years, and I can still remember meeting her when she was 17, I was about the same age, and we were at a dance, and I didn't even know who she was, but the guys weren't with the dates back then. So I saw her out there dancing, and I told my buddy, I says, "Hey George, see that woman, that lady over there? That's the one I'm gonna marry." I never saw her before, never knew her, but I picked her out. And about 6 or 7 years later, after I came back from the war, we got married because I picked her out.
That's pretty good. That's a great story. Now, how many years you been married?
55 years, but I'm still on probation.
Ah. So how do you explain the longevity of your marriage?
Well, I think you live and learn, and there's a give and take, and part of the challenge is to know how much to give and how much to take, and when to let it go, and when to come up with it depends on the seriousness of the difference. And sometimes something might be real serious for me, but it may not be real serious for her, and sometimes that causes or gets you into a difference of opinion where you may have an argument. But I think what you have to do is make sure that you know all the feelings, because sometimes I might say something and it doesn't express all of my feelings, and unless she hears more of what I feel, she won't really know how I feel, and that goes either way. So I think you try to learn through the years, and I think it helps to discuss your relationship with other people. Sometimes it's good to sit down with a friend of yours and talk about your relationships and see what their reaction is, because sometimes they can give you a real good solution to what you think is a problem. Mm-hmm. I think people are so diversified. Well, let me tell you, I belong to a retirees group, and there's about 100 of us that meet every Monday morning, and we have speakers, and they speak on various subjects. Well, the thing only lasts about an hour, so the speaker might talk for 20, 30 minutes, but the real learning area is after the speaker is done and he says, "Do I have any questions?" These 100 people that come from all diversified areas in their life, we learn 10 times as much from them, because we're hearing questions related to this person's mm-hmm. life, this person's life, and it's the most interesting and educational 1 hour a week that we have. It's great. And more people should do it. I like when people go to, I don't know what you call them, counselors or whatever, and just express their feelings, and that Dr. Phil on TV, to me, he's one of the best ever. I just love to hear him because he hears both sides of the story, and then he asks questions and gets answers and feelings, and it's a lot easier to come to a conclusion then.
Yeah.
So I think that's what helps a lot.
Getting the big picture from a lot of dialogue.
Yeah, yeah, and I think people are so busy now, they don't have time to sit down and discuss their differences, you know, with children and all the things that are going on, sports that they have to take the kids to, and recitals and music and all that. And that's hard for parents to raise their kids now. It's a challenge for them.
Yeah, I like what George Carlin said. He said, "Whatever happened to letting kids just stare out at the window?" Yeah, but that's a good point, Dad. Like, you came from a family of 11, then you raised a family of 4. Most families now pretty much limit to 2 kids. How do you explain that change? Do you have any ideas on that, of how many kids were raised? You know, how many children parents would have?
You mean back then versus now?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think back then we didn't have a car. We walked to church. We walked to the store. We walked to the barber shop. We walked all over. We didn't have a car. We didn't have radio. We didn't have TV. We didn't have telephones. I can still remember my dad answering the telephone for the first time. He says, "What do you do this? How do you hold this? What do I do? What am I listening to?" You know. Now there's everything to buy, and those kids have toys and gadgets and whatnot. When we go to our grandkids and they showed me, what do you call it, this Game Boy,
yeah,
and all these other gadgets, I don't even want to learn how to use them. You know, it's too complicated now, and I feel sorry. And the other thing is, you got many families where there's 2 parents working, so they're not with the kids. Now, my mother, she never worked, you know. Dad.
She worked as a mother.
Yeah, as a mother.
She was always home.
But my dad was the only one that worked.
They call them house technicians.
Yeah, house technicians.
Or home technicians.
Yeah, but you know that it's harder for married people now, where they both work and try to raise kids. It's difficult. So that's one reason why you don't have 10 or 11 kids now. It's 2 or 3, and that's.
Well, how about the longevity of marriages alone? It seems, you know, that people from your generation last 50, 60 years as a couple, whereas, you know, my generation, you see less of that.
Oh, yeah.
Why do you have any ideas why that changed?
Well, I think when you married back then, it was almost not a law, but I can't remember anybody in our area, in a big area, that got divorced. We didn't even know, you know, what divorce was and why you did it and so forth. It was, you know, sort of a, well, you made a commitment.
Yeah.
When you got married, that was it. And, you know, maybe we could have learned of how that happened more, the way they committed to each other, than now. But I think it was the way the life was more simple than it is now.
Joni Mitchell said it interesting too. She said she read in Esquire magazine, of all places, that you find more variety with one than with many.
Well,
that some people say, well, I've gotten bored, I have to move on and find a new partner, when in essence, the longer you stay with a person, you're going to find more variety.
Well, that's right, because your friends may want you to know them for only one reason, or one thing that they have in life. They don't want you to hear all the others. So when you're married and live together, you learn all about each other, which is the right way to do it.
That is. And we have a couple who've been together for 60 years, and we were eating dinner with them once, and the woman said, I didn't know that about you. And it was like really healthy for us to hear somebody, for 60 years didn't even learn something new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear that with some of our friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never told me that.
Now, what gives you the most optimism?
Well, it's your life. It's your life, and I think one of the outlooks that you have on life, it has to be positive, because sometimes things that look like they're the worst things that could happen to you, you got to keep an open mind and just wait and see. I know things that have happened to people that were the worst things ever, and many times what happened to them just turned their life around, and they become a lot better for many reasons.
Yeah.
They appreciate life, or they found a different avenue of which to do their life with. They may have had to change an occupation, maybe, because if somebody broke their leg or had their leg cut off or something like that and couldn't do what they wanted to do, they may have turned to another occupation that was even better for them. So I think you got to look at the positive side of life and say, look, things are going to happen, and many times things are going to happen that you didn't like or expect, but just deal with them in a calm, friendly manner, not too rushy.
Right.
You know, things have happened to people. Some of our most famous people, if you read their life biographies, you'll find out that things happened to them in their life that you could never believe. They turned out to be what they ended up being.
Right.
So you gotta.
It's the other way around too. They asked Albert Einstein if he could do it all over. He said he'd be a plumber.
Yeah, that's.
So, maybe you can tell me, were you raised a particular religion?
We were raised Catholic because I
Right.
think everybody in the neighborhood was Catholic. So you walked to church, and everybody understood you and so
Right.
forth.
I think religion's important. I was raised Catholic by my parents, you and Dee, in fact, and I think religion is important for the fact that you learn community and you learn music and you learn some art, religious iconography. But I think also religion has some limiting things, and I was wondering if you had any doubts, especially like being in the war. You're caught in the midst of this tragedy, and did you ever cross your mind like, how, if there's a God, why would he ever let this happen? I mean, did that come up, or?
No, never. It never came up, and it never does come up, because I think religion is in the mind and heart of each person. When I was waiting for the war to start in England, we spent 6 months waiting for the war to start there, and I'd go to churches, and although I was Catholic, I'd go in a church and I'd come out, and I'd find out after I came out that it wasn't a Catholic church, it was some other church, but the sermon was there or whatever it was.
Right.
So
The rituals still happen.
yeah, so I'm open-minded, because I don't care what religion people are in. You don't have to tell me what religion you are. It's how you behave and how you act.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good point. And I think that's happening more, what do you call it, not so strict now like it used to be.
Right. It's a little looser.
Yeah.
Well, we're closing up, Al. In the last closing half a minute, can you give us some of your fake Polish talk?
O, ja nie rozumiesz, co ty mówisz. Wszystko jest janamaśki. Jedź do domu spać, wszystko co ja znam, krumszki kora nieszka. Tać korobapniczka to papażniku popaleśnika. Robka śniku kumstoszka. Rabki no łupki, śniko, ja ci dam po morze, ty głupi jeden ty.
Jeez, that was great, Dad. I know what you said was really important, right?
Yes. Idź do domu spać, let's go to bed and sleep.
Jak się masz?
How are you? Jak się masz?